Welcome to Showbiz Chicago, the podcast. I am your host, Michael Roberts. I am so excited to have my next guest with me. Many people know her actually from the Harry Potter movies. She was also Madame Morble in Wicked and star of stage, screen, television. And she is going to be at the Chicago Shakespeare Theater doing her very famed performance of Dickens' Women, a play that she actually wrote, and has been portraying 24, 26 characters for, what is it, Miriam, the last 5 years this has been going on?
Well, I co-wrote it with Sonia Fraser in 1989.
Oh.
But we haven't been doing it continuously. This year, I've been doing it since February. Before that, I hadn't done it for 5 years when I did it in Australia.
That's what it
was. And before that, I hadn't done it for about 15 years. So it's definitely not fresh out of the box.
Got it.
But it's different because I'm different. And it's better because I'm better.
and that's the one great thing that comes with our age, isn't it, Miriam?
Well, we hope it does.
Right? But, I mean, it's amazing just how life experience changes the actor. You know?
Of course it does. You're quite right. And the things that happen in your life and the time it takes to live them allow you reflection and development. And I feel that I have developed, that I have increased my powers. You know, one lot of powers wanes. That's lifting and running and climbing stairs. That has definitely waned. But understanding about people and my craft, that has increased.
So, what has changed in your portrayal of these fascinating women, Dickens' women?
I think what's changed is that they are just deeper. I see more layers in people than I probably did when I started. So that the characterizations are more grounded and rounded and believable.
And that's what it's always about, isn't it? It's about the truth.
It has to be about the truth, yes.
So how did this whole play come about?
It came about this year because it's the 200th anniversary of Dickens' birth. That's why it's been trotted out this year. But how it happened originally was simply because I had always loved him from the time that I read Oliver Twist when I was 11. And then I studied him at Cambridge University in England and realized that not only was he the greatest prose writer that ever lived and wrote in English, but also an absolutely extraordinary, compelling and complex personality. And I wanted to try and meld the man and the work and do it in a dramatic way. I never intended it to be a one-person show. That was force of circumstance because my contact David Timson got married and didn't want to tour, and I couldn't find anybody as good as him to replace him, so I had to do it myself.
Wow.
And that's how it became a one-person show, which was in Los Angeles in 1991, when Norman Lear put it on for me when I was about to do a television series for him over there. But I don't like one-person shows. I don't want to do any other ones. It's very lonely.
It is.
But I do have a pianist with me on stage. In Chicago, it's Robert Deason.
Yes.
Who's my pianist.
Fantastic.
And I've never met him.
He's fantastic.
We're going to rehearse together. So I hope we get on. But I've loved all the pianists I've had so far. I don't sleep with them. I just enjoy working.
Well, you know, I'll sleep with them for you, and then I'll let you know. How's that?
I'm happy for you to try.
I'll go to bat for the team for you, Miriam. So, Miriam, tell me, how do these women define Charles Dickens as a man?
Well, I don't think that any single one defines him.
But as a whole.
I think in their multiplicity, they show that he was a damaged and bitter man, that he was a loving and enthusiastic man, that he was both shy and convivial. He was a complicated, full of opposites kind of personality. And it makes me both love him and hate him. And that's how the audience feels when they've seen the show.
So what's the commonality of these women?
I don't think there is a commonality.
Okay.
So, my great guru on Dickens is an academic in England called Michael Slater, who is probably the greatest Dickensian working alive now. And he wrote a book called Dickens and Women, and he divided Dickens women into three, and they were the unattainable sexual objects, like Estella and Lady Dedlock and Edith Dombey, and the little itty-bitty heroines, like Little Nell and Little Emily and Little Dorrit and Dora and Ruth Pinch, that kind of little, what I call the mini-breasted prepubescent. And then there were the grotesques. And, of course, I think if I have to put myself in any one of those categories, I would be one of the grotesques.
No.
And they're great fun to play. Not much fun to live with, I should think. But those are basically the categories of women that I display.
Right. So what I want to ask, because there's really no such thing like as one-woman shows. I mean, there's so much complexity that goes behind them. How are these shows directed, and how do you work with directors now?
Sonia Fraser was my director and my co-writer.
Right.
We're old friends. We started in BBC Radio together in the days when you could make a living on radio acting, and it's always been my first love.
Really?
But I think I worked with her just as I hope I do with any director, to be flexible, to be open to new ideas, to be prepared to try anything and explore. I think that when you're rehearsing, you're exploring something together. It's a joint exploration. And that's always the way that I go to work.
So, but when you're writing a work like this, and this interests me just from an artistic standpoint, Miriam, that's why I'm asking. So when you write a work and your director, who's the co-writer, is directing the work, how do you know, how do you know when to almost self-edit the work? Because that work becomes so personal to you, doesn't it? That how do you know when it's time to let it go and bring it out to the audience?
You don't always know when it's time to let it go, but you have to trust your director. And that's what I do. I trust Sonia completely. And she's never been wrong. So
well, there you go.
I'm right to place my trust in her. Yeah. I think this show is probably also quite revealing about me. I mean, not that I'm particularly interesting, but
you are.
I think that when you do a one-person show, so much of yourself goes into it.
Absolutely.
It can't but be revealing of the person who's performing. And the important thing is to keep me down, to keep me out of it as much as possible.
Sure.
Because it should be about Mr. Dickens.
Sure.
He is the focus. And in the second half, Mrs. Dickens.
Yep.
Because she is a very important character in my show. I don't call it a play, I call it a show, because there isn't a story as such. It doesn't, in a way, develop, but what it does is it shows the graph of his life, and it mirrors it. That's what I wanted to do.
And Miriam, since you've done this in so many countries, do audience in different countries receive the work differently?
Not really. On the whole, they can laugh in different places.
Sure.
I do notice that some places find some bits funny and other places other bits funny. And that depends. I think the best audiences I ever had were in India.
Really?
Because they know their Dickens very well. And you know how at a pop concert people clap when they recognize the first few notes of a tune? Well, they didn't actually clap, but there were great sort of, oh, yes, of course. That sort of reaction, which is rather lovely to have.
Interesting.
But everywhere, I must say, I've been extremely complimented, and people people love the show because, he's so good. And it's both terribly funny,
right,
and people do laugh, and people also cry. I mean, people come up to me afterwards crying. And that's, it's very gratifying to be able to evoke emotion like that. That's the thing about Dickens, you see. His emotion was not buried like most of ours, below the surface. It was very accessible, so he could laugh and cry with great ease, as do his characters.
Right. And that's of all the authors, with Great Expectations and Oliver Twist and all his works, they're still so relevant to this day because they're like passion plays, really.
I totally agree with you. Sometimes people have asked me, what is the point of talking about a 19th century dead writer? And I say, well, the point is because he knew and revealed humanity.
Right.
And humanity itself has not changed. We are the same people, as we are the same as Shakespeare's people and Chaucer's people. We have the same longings, dreams, disappointments, desires, the same moments of revenge, of wickedness, of glory, just as they did. And also, Dickens was a wonderful and lethal examiner of the human condition, specifically at the time that he lived.
Yes.
And we have not changed economically, politically, within the jurisdiction. There are the same problems that now that he experienced and his time experienced. So he's extraordinarily relevant. The cruelties to the poor people,
yes,
the children,
yes,
they're absolutely unchanged.
And the perfect example of that, Miriam, my God, is A Christmas Carol. Especially today. I mean, with all the financial instability and political corruption and all of that, just to have like a Scrooge, that essence of Scrooge, and to have a life self-examined like that, that's so timeless.
Yes, it is, and that's why Christmas Carol is so beloved and so popular always. I mean, all over the world, you'll find Christmas Carol being done in almost every town, I think, in the production. I'm in Toronto as I speak to you. I'm coming to Chicago with excitement to play in that wonderful theater.
We can't wait.
And there are performances of Christmas Carol in Chicago, in Toronto, in London.
Yes.
And I'm very thrilled to be able to perform some Dickens at the Christmas time, which is Dickens time.
Exactly. In fact, Miriam, I just saw, two things. A friend of mine, Bruce Valanche, is in a gay lesbian film version of Christmas Carol. And there's also a one-man show here called Charles Dickens Begrudgingly Performs A Christmas Carol, where it's Charles Dickens who is hosting a party. This is the 160th anniversary of A Christmas Carol, his writing. And it's this man playing Charles Dickens telling the story, which is, I mean, there's so many universal ways to tell the same story of this man, which is just amazing to me, which I love.
Yes, well, it is one of the enduring works of genius, and it gives pleasure every year to different generations.
Absolutely.
I don't do Christmas Carol in my show. I've got a slightly different remit, but I love going to it, and I'm going to see it in London when I get back for Christmas to England, and I'm going to see my great friend Simon Callow perform it.
Oh, my God.
Who is one of the great Dickensians.
Absolutely. I might go with you, Miriam. I might hide in your suitcase. Just to go. So how have you seen, you've been working in the industry for so long now, in radio, film, television, theater, the good and the bad. How have you seen all the industry change, the entertainment industry change as a whole, for the bad and for the good?
I'm not sure that I can give you a précis in a short time. Of course, it has changed, and I think for the aspiring actor, it's got much more difficult.
I agree.
Because, for one thing, in England particularly, and probably in America too, there is much less theatre.
Yes.
And theatre is where you learn things. I don't think you learn much doing television and film. You have to do an awful lot of film to get better at it. I mean, Liz Taylor was a genius, and that's because she started at 12. She probably wasn't a genius at 12, but my word, she was when she was in her prime, because she'd done so much. But I regret the closure of so many theatres and the collapse of our repertory system, which is the reason why there are so many fine character actors in England, because they learnt doing the shows week after week in reps around the country, and that has changed.
There is.
I think also, of course, it's changed because there are now video games and animation cartoons. People used to call them cartoons, animation features, and people are doing the voices for that.
Yes.
I do it myself, which is a new area of the business, and a good one, an exciting development. But I do miss the attention to vocal precision, which was so important when I was growing up, and seems not to be now.
And even trying to get new work developed, Miriam, for the stage is so hard, even by, very established playwrights, because the way social media seems to be working, if it's not an instant success, there's no time for anything to develop like there used to be. Like the perfect example, I think, is this David Mamet play that's been in the works for so many years with Patti LuPone, and it's lasted 4 weeks because there was no real time to develop it before. So I really think even social media is hurting even the stagecraft of it.
Oh, I'm sure that's true. I didn't know about that particular play, and for me, Patti LuPone is one of the greatest people performing at the moment.
I agree.
Think she's absolutely wonderful. Did you see her in Gypsy?
I did see it. Gypsy actually started here in Chicago, Miriam, at the Ravinia Festival.
That doesn't surprise me, because Chicago is a theatre city.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so particularly thrilled to be coming to Chicago to do the show.
Yes, I
feel when you perform in Chicago, it's a present, it's an accolade for an actor, and I'm really excited about that.
It is.
Patti is one of the great ones.
She is. I've known her for years as well, and I'm one of the few people that flew to London to see her in Sunset Boulevard. And I thought she was brilliant.
Oh, I missed that. I was, somewhere else, I suppose.
So, and what you're saying about even the Chicago acting experience, Chicago actors are very meaty and authentic. And when Chicago actors divulge into different cities, or when a Chicago production moves to New York, it's really that, I think, authentic experience that you were speaking of earlier that really makes our actors unique. And I think the British actor is cut of the same ilk because it's repertory. I mean, many of the small theaters here are repertory.
I remember meeting the Steppenwolf Company years and years ago when they first started, and I knew that I was in the presence of greatness. They were extraordinary and wonderful, and this is when I was, it must be, 30 years ago perhaps. When did they start?
In the early 1980s, Miriam.
Well, it must have been then.
Yeah.
So that's, 20 years ago?
No,
yes,
30. Almost 30. That's 30 years ago.
It was extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I knew that these were people of immense talent and range and commitment, and their shared ideal was thrilling. So I'm very much a humble person coming to Chicago. I know what a tradition there is there.
Yes, and especially the Chicago Shakespeare Theater. I mean, even within the last 5 years, they've come so into themselves, and they're doing such amazing work and bringing in repertory companies from all over the world. They're doing this whole exchange program with Scotland, and they had this show called Black Watch here about the Black Watch infantry. It was just stunning, absolutely stunning. So I think that introduces not only Chicago but the world, to many different forms of acting, many different forms of theater that can only heighten the education of the populace, to make it better.
Well, I mean, education and entertainment.
Yes.
That's what theatre should be doing, and that's what I'm doing. That's what they're doing. And I'm very happy to be still working at 71, believe me.
I know. And thank you for being an out lesbian. I am an out gay man, and having people like you around in the industry makes it much easier for people like me.
I think that it's the responsibility of those of us who've done all right in the business and are not afraid to say who we are. But, Michael, I have a caveat about this.
Tell me.
I don't believe that people should come out to their families if the families are not able to take it. I know this is a very unpopular stance these days, but I know that when I told my mother, it practically killed her. And I think I was wrong to do that. I think it was indulgent. I think you have to know who you're talking to when you tell them about yourself.
And I agree with that to a certain extent, because I think the family dynamic always has to be respected, especially you're a member of that family dynamic. So.
Yes, I think that sometimes people get too wrapped up in being gay and remember that there is a higher duty, which is for the human race.
Right.
We're all human beings, and then we divide up into men and women and all the rest of it. I love being gay, and I've been very lucky. I found the right person. We've been together for 44 years. How lucky is that? But a lot of people don't have a good time being gay, and that I feel sad for.
Yeah.
And I hope that things improve. But I just love it. But I do know that there are other things besides being gay. I'm short, fat, and Jewish, for example.
Well, right. It's one of many things that defines us, but it's not the thing that defines us.
I won't let any one adjective define me.
Absolutely.
I am Miriam, and that is the defining quality.
Absolutely. And without that, without all these other things making us a whole, you can't let one thing define you, because that one thing can take over and wreak havoc on you.
That's right.
Something that's
exactly so.
I know. Well, in closing, Miriam, what has been your, and this is probably hard to say because you've had such an amazing career, but what has been, give me 2 career highlights that stand out for you.
It is hard to say. Certainly doing this tour has been a highlight, personal and career. I've never been better. I've never done better work. And I've never had such accolades from all over the world for this. All over Australia and New Zealand and England and Scotland and Canada and America. And that means a lot to me to please an audience.
Sure.
Another triumph for me was a film called The Age of Innocence.
Yes.
A Scorsese film, which I won the BAFTA award. And I never thought I'd ever win an award for movie acting, because I never think of myself as a movie actress, although it turns out that I've done more films than anything. But it was a wonderful experience, and I was working with a very great director, whom I revere, and working with Dan Day-Lewis, a very great actor,
the best,
most delightful man, and it was a tremendous experience.
The best.
I loved being in Romeo and Juliet, working for Baz Luhrmann, with Leonardo Dicaprio, and that was a special time in Mexico, one of the most glorious countries you could go to, just wonderful. I saw Baz and Leonardo recently when I was in Australia. They were filming The Great Gatsby there, and it's 18 years since I'd seen them, so it was very, very nice to hook up again. And I suppose the film that I love very much is not one that most people know, perhaps. It's called Sunshine, and it was directed by Hungarian director István Szabó, who made a great film about a gay man called Colonel Redl, R-E-D-L, which you should see.
I would love to.
It won the Foreign Film Oscar some years ago, and it's just a brilliant film. But Sunshine was about 3 generations of a Jewish-Hungarian family, with Ralph Fiennes playing the hero in all 3 generations, and I was the first generation mother. And Rachel Weisz was in it, and Rosemary Harris. It was just a wonderful film, and István is a great director. That was very special.
Those
are some of my career highlights. And of course, I guess I'd have to mention being Madame Morrible on Broadway.
Well,
I did it in London, which was exciting, but they asked me to come to Broadway and do it, and that was a thrill.
Boy, isn't that a show, Miriam, that what a following that show has. I
do, they're all lovely.
Anything like it.
They used to come and queue for hours, and queue seeing it afterwards, and I've never known a fan base like it, except, of course, the Harry Potter fan base, which is equally nothing.
I agree with you, and the Wicked fan base is so cross-generational.
Yes, it's a crowd pleaser, and I think it's also a show for people who feel themselves to be outsiders.
Yes.
And I've always felt myself to be an outsider, so it was very much a show that spoke to me.
Yes.
And wonderful to do.
Well, you were
but I must love you and leave you, so thank you very much for having me.
And thank you, Miriam, and I will see you next week at the Chicago Shakespeare Theater.
I hope you'll be in the audience.
I will. I will be there opening night, my love.
And your listeners, please.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That's Madame Morrible ordering you. Thank you so much, Miriam. You're a delight.
Many thanks, Mikey. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.